You know, we're about to dive into the story of a sugar you probably have every single day, fructose. It's in the fruit you eat, sure, but it's also in that can of soda. And what if I told you that depending on where it comes from, your body treats it in two completely different ways? This is a tale of chemistry, biology, and even global health. So let's get right into it.
So, what's the real deal here? What actually makes the sugar in an apple different from the spoonful of sugar you put in your coffee? I mean, they both taste sweet, right? But as you're about to see, once they get inside your body, they set off two very, very different chains of events. So, let's meet our main character, fructose. Now, you find it naturally in things like fruits and honey, but it's also a major player in stuff like high fructose corn syrup. Its journey is surprisingly complex, connecting its tiny molecular structure all the way up to huge global health policies. Honestly, if you can understand this one molecule, you're on your way to understanding a big piece of modern nutrition.
All right, first up, we've got to talk about the chemistry. I know, but stick with me, because this is the foundation for everything else we're going to cover. Okay, so scientifically, fructose is what's called a ketose sugar. All you really need to know is that it has a special little chemical feature called a ketone group. It's this one structural quirk that sets it apart from other sugars and, fun fact, makes it the most common type of ketose you'll find in nature.
And here's where things get really fascinating. Look at this. On the left, you've got fructose. On the right, you've got its famous cousin, glucose. See that little circled group? On fructose, it's on the second carbon atom. On glucose, it's on the first. It seems like such a tiny, insignificant detail, doesn't it? Just one little bond in a different spot.
But that tiny change is the massive plot twist in our story. Because of that one little difference, your body has a completely separate and way more direct system for handling fructose. So let's follow it into the body and see what happens next.
Which brings us to part 2, the fructose pathway. We're going to follow this sugar as it makes its way through your body and see exactly what route it takes.
And here it is, the key difference. Think of glucose as your body's universal fuel source. It goes everywhere, your muscles, your brain, and its use is carefully managed by insulin. Fructose, on the other hand, it's like an express train with only one destination, your liver. And here's the most important part. It's an unregulated express train. There are no brakes.
This diagram just lays it all out perfectly. Look over on the left, that's the glucose path. It gets into the liver, yeah, but its processing is controlled. It's used by tissues all over your body. Now, look at the right side. That's the fructose path. It gets absorbed and goes straight to the liver, completely bypassing all those critical regulatory checkpoints. It's a direct, unchecked VIP line right to the liver's metabolic factory.
So let's just break that down real quick. 1. Fructose is absorbed into the liver super fast. 2. It completely skips the normal energy checkpoints that other sugars have to go through. And 3. Because it blows past those checkpoints, the liver is way more likely to just turn it directly into fat. And this right here, this is the critical link between fructose and its effects on our health.
So what happens when this unregulated express train is overloaded day after day? Well, that brings us to the health impacts.
Yeah, academic studies have connected high fructose intake to a whole cluster of serious issues. We're talking about things like metabolic syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a higher risk for type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular problems. Let's take a closer look at what these mean.
First up is metabolic syndrome. Now, this isn't just one single disease. It's a collection of risk factors. As we just saw, that unregulated fructose metabolism can lead to more fats in the blood, like triglycerides. Over time, that can contribute to insulin resistance and higher blood pressure, basically ticking all the boxes for this syndrome and seriously upping your risk for heart disease and stroke.
And the risks don't stop there. All that fat being produced in the liver can lead directly to something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. High fructose is also linked to inflammation and more uric acid, which is bad news for your heart. And all of this together can mess up how your body handles glucose in general, pushing you closer to a risk of type 2 diabetes.
So, with such clear risks on the table, how are global health organizations responding? This brings us to the public health side of the story.
The World Health Organization, the WHO, they have a very specific number in mind, less than 10%.
Their official recommendation is that free sugars should make up less than 10% of your total daily energy intake. And they even say that for additional benefits, you should aim for less than 5%. This chart really gives you a powerful visual of just how small that slice of our diet should be.
So you're probably asking, what exactly is a free sugar? Well, it's not just the sugar you add to your coffee. The WHO's definition covers all the sugars added by manufacturers, plus the sugars that are naturally in honey, syrups, and importantly, fruit juices. And why are they targeted? Because the evidence is overwhelming that a high intake of these is linked to obesity, diabetes, and dental problems.
Now, to help people actually meet these guidelines, the WHO encourages governments to step in. This includes things like demanding clearer food labels so you actually know what you're eating, funding public education campaigns to raise awareness, and even putting taxes on sugary drinks to make people think twice.
So the science is pretty strong and the policy advice is clear. But to give you the complete story, it's also really important to know what researchers are still working to figure out.
You know, good science always admits what it doesn't know yet. A lot of the studies on fructose have been short-term, so we have less data on the really long-term effects. It's also super challenging for researchers to separate the effects of fructose from just the effects of eating too many calories in general. That's exactly why the scientific community is pushing for more long-term, standardized studies to get an even clearer picture.
But here's the thing. Even with those limitations, the overall scientific consensus is crystal clear. This quote from the university report's conclusion just says it all. Scientific evidence clearly indicates that excessive fructose intake poses significant health risks. The core message is absolutely not in doubt.
And that brings our story to a close. We've seen how one tiny chemical difference leads to a totally unique metabolic pathway, and how that can have some really major consequences for our health. So the final question really is for you. Knowing what you know now about how your body takes this direct, unregulated express train with fructose, will you think differently about all the hidden sugars in your food?